Okay, Hazy and T in the building. This one's an episode about the Canucks. We got Sportsnet 650's Andrew Walker joining me here today. If you like what I'm doing, hit the subscribe button.
Hey, it's Andrew Walker from Sportsnet 650, and I'm really excited to be on Ryan's podcast. I only touch greatness. I'm not sure why I'm on it, not somebody else, but looking forward to it.
Hayes, exclusive.
Ryan Hayes. I never stop. I Only Touch Greatness podcast.
The number one sports podcast in Vancouver with Ryan Hayes. Roll it up and fire it up.
No worries. Change my name to my real name.
Oh, yeah. High fives. That must be for the boys.
It was, it was a fantasy football draft.
Oh, okay. You do yours on a Zoom chat or just?
We did one. How do I change it? Oh yeah, here we go.
I tried to get my draft to do that too. Nobody wanted to listen to me.
Yeah, no, a few of us got together on Zoom to do it anyway.
Okay. So you were born in Alberta, I believe, but grew up in Saskatchewan. What sports did you play growing up?
No, I was born and raised in Saskatchewan, and then I ended up living in Alberta after school, working for 10 years in Red Deer and Calgary. So yeah, growing up, I played everything: hockey, a lot of baseball, and then through just in high school, basketball, volleyball. The only thing we didn't play was football. Our small town high schools didn't have football down south, so.
Okay. What made you want to be a sports broadcaster?
It's funny because when I went to school, like a broadcast school, there was a lot of the other students were kind of like, kind of broadcast, fans and nerds, I guess, for lack of a better term. They had always wanted to be in radio or broadcasting or whatever. And I was never really like that. I just really liked sports. So I kind of did the journalism school on a whim and ended up kind of just being naturally decent at it. So I actually didn't always want to be a sports broadcaster. I just wanted to be in sports somehow. And then in grade 12, actually, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I took a little hockey trip with my cousin. We drove down to Denver in like 2001, and we ended up being at Pepsi Center in Colorado like super early one night before the game, and we actually ended up running into Scott Oak and Kelly Rudy when they were doing hockey night. Okay. And so we kind of got to go behind the scenes, and we were on old school hockey night kind of before the game. They did a little interview with us, and I was like 17 or 18 at the time, and I thought it was pretty cool. And then I got home the next week, and I enrolled in broadcast school after seeing behind the scenes. And it's funny because, Kelly Rudy and I have like since become friends, and we're colleagues, and we worked together many times, and he's been on our shows and stuff like that. And he actually does remember the little interaction that we had basically 20 years ago. And that kind of led to me going to broadcast school. So kind of funny.
And that's a good name to bring up. Kelly Rudy's been on my show too. He's a great guy. He's one of the first episodes we had. And yeah, he still remembers it. We've only been doing this since the start of COVID because we ran out of things to do. So
right. He's a really good guy.
Yeah, definitely is. So was your first major gig then working at the Fan 590 in Toronto?
My first major gig, well, I mean, I broke into sports in about 05 in Red Deer, Alberta. I got the sports job there, which was really big for me because I was doing news before that. And so I got to kind of cover the Western Hockey League and the Red Deer Rebels, and that was a good start for me, for sure, to be able to do sports. And then I started working for Sportsnet in about 2010. I moved to Calgary, and I was working for the Fan 960 in Calgary there. So I would say that was my first major gig, not in terms of money or anything like that, but just in terms of getting to do sports talk and radio full time with hockey. And then, at 590 in Toronto, that's when I moved in 2013. And that's kind of when I, signed an actual contract and broadcasting kind of for the first time felt like a career as opposed to kind of like just something fun,
Yeah, that's for sure. Do you have a favorite sports hero?
As a hero?
Or athlete, sports athlete?
Yeah, you know what? I know this is such a simple answer, but, Wayne Gretzky, obviously I just think is so perfectly Canadiana and does so much for the game and has done so much for the game. So I'm always a Gretzky stan for sure. Growing up, I loved Joe Carter. Roy Halladay was a big one for me.
In my notes here, I got Doug Gilmour.
No, I'm not a Leafs guy. I've never been. People get the Leafs propaganda a little too much for me just because I worked in Toronto for a spell. But my favorite player growing up was probably Gretzky, and then when I was in my early teenage years, I cheered for the Oilers, and I really liked when they had Doug Weight. He was a favorite player of mine.
Okay, that's good. You did the afternoon drive with Rintoul for a while. That's over now, correct?
Yeah, no, Rintoul moved earlier, so Rintoul is working he does the 9 a.m. show now, and so Sat and I do the afternoon drive now.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so you say we know you're from back east, or at least started back east, and you came out west. Do you still hate the Canucks?
No, I never did hate the Canucks. I actually only worked out west or out east for a few years. I've been in Vancouver just as long as I ever was in Toronto. So, people get caught up in that.
Right.
I know, whatever. I know this market is big on social media and people remember tweets and try to, dunk or whatever. But in 2011, I was working in Calgary, and I mean, Flames fans and Canucks fans, it's a rivalry. So you just kind of play to the crowd. And same here in Vancouver. If you read my Twitter now, we talk about Vegas and we talk about, the St. Louis Blues, and we talk about rivals. And I don't know, what happens if I were to go to work in Vegas in 10 years? Are people going to bring up my Vegas tweets and be like, oh, you hate the Knights? I don't hate anybody. I'm not a fan. It's just social media,
That's what happened. I went to go try to do some homework and get some questions for you, and it brought up an article that said that you had some tweets that you hated the Canucks.
Yeah, it's pretty silly. That's stupid. Stupid blogger stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I see you're drinking the neutrals. So am I. I'm also trying to get them to sponsor my show, because I'd be drinking them in every episode. So
yeah, no, it's true. It's sit at home in COVID. Sometimes sticking off beer is probably the right idea.
You ever seen the guy that goes to Canuck games and dresses up as Don Cherry?
I have. I do recognize you. Yes.
That's me, bud.
Yeah.
It started as a Halloween costume, and I went Halloween night to the Chicago Blackhawks game a few years ago on Halloween night, and definitely was all over the TV that day.
Yeah. I remember.
Yeah. And then the Canucks had me actually crank the siren before the game one time, dressed as Don Cherry, and then it kind of just became a hobby. And
you pull it off. I remember seeing you at the Canucks for Kids tournament too.
Oh, and the alumni, the Canucks alumni. That's the day that I guess Shorthouse was there, Sportsnet Murph was there too, and everybody else was there, all the Sportsnet guys. What was your first impressions of Rintoul now that we've got him coming up on the show next week?
Oh, Rintoul? Well, I mean, I knew Scotty for a lot of years, not overly well, but Scotty's been around sports media for a long time, especially around the CFL, which is where I knew him, and I know he did where had I seen Scott when he had worked at Sportsnet, and he had done, I remember seeing him on Shaw when he hosted some WHL games. And one of my good friends in the business is Ray Ferraro, and Scott back in the day used to do a show with Ray as well. So, I had learned about Scott a little bit in that avenue too. And when we started the radio station here in 2017, and I had come out with some of the bosses, and we had tried to kind of put a roster together, and not that I got to make the final calls or anything like that, but I certainly was at the ground level of helping to see, hey, who could work on our station at different time slots, and our initial foray was Scott and I doing afternoon drive, and he's a guy that's been around for a long time and is a good leader, and certainly is familiar in the market. So I think it was important for 650 to start that way with guys like Rintoul and Cybulski, guys that people recognize in Vancouver.
Yeah, that's true. I've got the same question for him to ask him next week. What was his first impressions of you? So I wanted to ask you both. Thoughts on Jamal Murray becoming the face of Canada basketball? I saw you talking about this online the other day.
Yeah, he's awesome, man. I remember, like, I'm I can watch young hockey players and see, like, try to analyze a little bit, but I it's different for basketball. Like, I watched Jamal Murray when I was in Toronto at the Pan Am Games, and he was 18, youngest guy in the team, and it was a high-level tournament, and he was fearless. And he was going to be a first-round pick in the NBA, not a high first-round pick, but a first-round pick. And I remember just loving the kid's fearlessness. But you never know how that necessarily translates, right? And man, did it ever translate? He's a joy to watch, and to me, his star power is everything that we thought in the hype that Andrew Wiggins could be. Now, they're different players or whatever, but I mean, listen, Wiggins games were being broadcast, nationally when he was at Kansas, because he was our next big thing. And Jamal Murray is that. Like, I love Steve Nash, man, and he's the GOAT. But I'm not sure if Steve Nash ever had he won 2 MVPs. Can't take that away. But I'm not sure he ever had a night in the playoffs, Game 7 against a contender, where he, like, the next day it was like, wow, this is like Steve Nash day. So what Jamal Murray did the other night in Game 7 was one of the greatest performances by a Canadian in the sport ever.
Yeah, and I mean, Wiggins, he's kind of fallen off the radar with there's a whole abundance of Canadians, and this is the best basketball we've had for Canadian-wise in a long time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's so many guys, and it's unfortunate that we haven't had a high-level international tournament with all our guys there, and they blew that game against Venezuela a few years ago, which stopped them from going to the Olympics, like all that. But between Jamal Murray, RJ Barrett, Nick Nurse is a really important fixture there too. I'm super excited for Canadian basketball.
Okay, now to the Canucks. These Brock Boeser for Dumba ideas. What do you think of this stupid idea?
I mean, I understand. Here's the thing: as a hockey fan, what do you do when you get together with your buddies? You talk trades.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's what you do. People love trade rumors. They love to talk about potential deals. Canucks are a good team. All right, how do the Canucks become a better team? Now, people don't want to trade away draft picks. That's what they did for JT Miller, and maybe that enough is enough. You want to keep some of your draft picks, and I understand that. But as a fan, if you want the Canucks to make a big trade and for us all to be excited about, the Canucks team is kind of built into two categories. One is guys that you would never trade, guys like Hughes, guys like Pettersson, guys like Miller, guys like Horvat. And then the other side of it is guys that you'd be lucky to trade, right? Guys like Eriksson, guys like Beagle, guys like Roussel, guys like Sutter. Not getting anything for these guys. Jake Vertanen. There's one guy in the middle who is not one of your untouchables and also a player that everyone around the league would want, and that's Brock Boeser. So that's why his name gets talked about, because if you want the Canucks to make a trade, that's the guy that's going to be involved. That's just how it is. Doesn't mean they're going to trade him. Certainly doesn't mean they're going to trade him for Matt Dumba. I don't do that deal if I'm the Canucks. But
No,
I don't think if you're a fan, you can get mad at, why is Brock Boeser's name in rumors? Well, because of the reasons I just gave you. That's why.
Yeah, and that's a crazy Vancouver fans and internet going nuts on that. I don't want to see that.
But let me ask you this, right? So, like, people go on Twitter and they get all upset, right? It's like, why are you talking trade with Brock Boeser? But, like, when you talk about Canucks deals with your buddies, do you guys all be like, make sure no one mentions Brock Boeser because you want to be respectful? Do you do that?
No,
of course
the name.
Not. Of course not. You talk about whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, but the names that do, like you were saying, the names that do come up are Pettersson, Gaudette, maybe. I don't want to see either of them go anywhere. I don't want to see them go anywhere. As a season ticket holder, I want to win the cup. This definitely is not what I want to see happen. I'd love to see, if we have to get rid of Demko, I'd love to see him go to Colorado for Bowen Byram. Throw in Jake if you have to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a fabulous trade for the Vancouver Canucks, but goalies just don't move for that anymore. I know Schneider moved for the Bo Horvat pick a few years ago, and that ended up being a huge coup for the Vancouver Canucks for sure. But yeah, unfortunately, you just don't trade goalies for guys like that anymore. It just doesn't happen. I bet the Canucks wish they could, but I don't think Colorado's giving up Bowen Byram for a goalie. That's for sure.
No, I know, but they do need a goalie. So you throw in Jake, maybe as a sweetener.
Well, if anything, they could sign Markstrom.
Yeah, they could do that too. Which, then I don't get my friend Bowen Byram back.
I know. Byram would be a great Canuck. That's for sure.
That's for sure. And I mean, we do need help on defense, but I'm still a Jet Wu fan as well, so I'm hoping he can figure it out.
You're a who fan?
Jet Wu.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I mean, young player, right? Defensemen take a long time to develop, so maybe he ends up playing.
I sure hope he does. Just look what happened to Yolevi. He's going to probably get a shot next year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now how about them Seahawks going into week 2?
They were awesome in week 1, man. I think early season, it's always tough to quite analyze because, how good is Atlanta? Did they beat up on a really good team or a team that's not very good? But, the Seahawks O-line still has some issues for sure. But you could make the argument that, especially if Chris Carson stays healthy this year, that no team is more dangerous outside of maybe the Kansas City Chiefs than the Seattle Seahawks. That's a really quality win, and Jamal Adams is so awesome. So, and the biggest thing for the Seahawks, I think, right now is that the Niners look like they have some issues, certainly with injuries. So sitting here today, Seahawks have a really good chance to win the division. There's no doubt.
That's good. I got a bet with my buddy. That's a big bet. Lots of money on the line. He's a 49ers fan, so he took the 49ers to win the division, and I took the Seahawks. So
that's a great start for you. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I actually see Arizona finishing ahead of San Fran.
I like Kyler a lot.
Yeah, me too. Okay, have you got any Stanley Cup predictions? Like who's going to win this finals?
Well, I mean, I've been on Tampa for a while. I know this playoffs is a weird year; anything can happen. But I think Tampa. I think it's their time. I really do. I think Victor Hedman's going to win the Conn Smythe. And if Dallas manages to pull it out, I think clearly Miro Heiskanen is the guy with the Conn Smythe. But yeah, I think it's time for Tampa. I think they're going to win. And here's a hot take for your show. I think that Steven Stamkos is going to be the first captain of the Seattle franchise when that happens.
Huh. That's pretty good. And I mean, there's all the talks about Demko and Fleury going there, or even Carey Price's name's come up a few times. I've heard going to possibly be the goalie there. But Stamkos, that's a hell of a good take.
Well, man, I mean, he's still a big name. Tampa doesn't need him.
Yeah, they're showing that.
They're about to win a Stanley Cup without him. And when you talk about protecting guys in the expansion draft, protecting forwards. Stamkos makes so much money, he's been hurt so much that if you're Tampa, I mean, just list on one hand the guys that you're gonna protect over Stamkos. It's a lot. I bet Stamkos ends up going to Seattle unless they'll try to trade him beforehand, but who knows?
Yeah, that's for sure. I could see that happening too. And I mean, just like that, injury-wise, like we were saying, that's the reason also Brock Boeser is dispendable. He's got a little injured too. He's over.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't help things. I think I like Brock Boeser, and he's an important player for this team. But yeah, I think people get caught up in we fall in love with the ideas of players, and Brock Boeser, it's been a struggle for him for sure. He hasn't been in the lineup full time. So,
do you have a Super Bowl prediction?
Okay, I'll give you an original Super Bowl prediction, and I'll give you a crazy Super Bowl prediction because 2020 is pretty crazy. So my legit one is I would say Baltimore out of the AFC, and I'll say out of the NFC, I'll say Seattle out of the NFC. And a crazy one would be Tampa Bay and the Patriots.
Yeah, that would be something to see, even though I can't stand the Patriots or Tom Brady. But hey, I'd like to see that battle for sure.
Well, if you don't like Tom Brady, then you should be rooting for the Patriots now.
Yeah, that's for sure. I don't like the Patriots either because I'm a Seahawks season ticket holder as well. So this came up. Somebody at the bar, I was having a chat at the bar the other night when putting in my football picks. Do you know anything about this? The owners of the NHL franchises did a vote that if they can't have fans in the stadium next year, that they don't want to have a season.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but I mean, listen, the NHL and these teams are a business, right? Yeah. And there's money in jerseys and there's money in TV revenue and things like that. But the NHL is not like the NFL in the sense of, people have said for a lot of years, the NFL could exist as a league and thrive as a league without ever selling one ticket, just because it's so huge in terms of TV contracts and things like that. Not the case with the NHL. Like, I give credit to the NHL for setting up this the bubble and pulling it off, because it costs a lot of money, and some of that money, a lot of that money obviously gets recouped with ad revenue, but it's going to be really difficult for these owners pulling off a season with no game-to-game revenue in terms of tickets. And that's one of the big reasons why you hear about these teams with internal budgets right now. Like the cap might be 80-some million, but Team X says, oh yeah, we don't care what the cap is. We're only spending $70 million because I don't want to pay an extra $10 million for salaries and we're not making a lot of money. So, that's why the conversation has changed a little bit in terms of salaries and money owed now and signing bonuses and making trades that way.
All right, I got 3 more questions for you.
All right.
Okay. First one, what team takes Eriksson if we can get rid of him?
What team takes Louis Eriksson? I'm going to say
Utica.
Yeah, I'm gonna say nobody. I'm gonna say they're gonna squeeze him. They're just gonna say, hey man, this is up to you. But there's not a spot next year for you. And so we're gonna waive you and put you down in Utica. And if I'm Louis Eriksson, he's made most of his money already. If I'm Louis Eriksson, I pack it up, I pack it in, maybe you sign a 1-year deal somewhere else, or maybe you go play at home in Sweden. But that's my plan if I'm the Canucks. I squeeze him.
I sure hope so. I want him off the team. Personal highlight or personal low light that you have in your career?
In my career, man, I mean, a lot of highlights. Doing a talk show in Toronto when the Jays were blowing up in 2015, 2016 was so much fun. It was the truest, like, hysteria where you would just come in and all you have to do is flip on the microphone and start talking Blue Jays, and the phone boards were full. That was great. That was a big highlight for me. Coming out here to Vancouver and starting the station was really cool. That was very rewarding. And even honestly, like, even the last, because the world's so weird right now, the last month and a half doing the playoff games with SAD and doing the post game show late into the night was very cool considering everything we've been through. So that was good. In terms of lowlights, not a lot of lowlights. I think it's a grind early on in your career because you got to be willing to move around and live in pretty small, crappy towns and not make a lot of money and things like that. But that's all part of the process. And then honestly, like, lowlights, I think sometimes the heat or the abuse, or you mentioned that article off the top that idiot blogger wrote. I mean, stuff like that. You having a bad day, like, when you wake up sometimes and you check your Twitter, your email, and people are telling you to fuck off and die. Like it wears on you sometimes, but it comes with the territory.
And people hate on you because you're doing something right. So they only hate.
That's how it goes. Yep. That's how it goes.
Okay, this one, off the air. Does Sportsnet reporters get along with 1040 reporters?
Yeah. I mean, pretty much.
It's not like a war, like I would.
No. You'll always have. I mean, listen, we're all competitive for sure. And I'm friends with some of the 1040 guys, and I've golfed with most of them and stuff like that. I think once in a while, I mean, it's just kind of like human nature. One guy from one side is going to not like a particular guy from the other side. That happens. I think we all have those little built-in rivalries or guys that we think are shitty people that we just don't like. But for the most part, it's much like sports. I think on the field of play, you get after each other, and off the field of play, you're all kind of in the same industry. I think that the industry is very small, number one. And then number two, I think people that get too involved in these radio war things, I think it's a little silly because people lose sight of the fact that having multiple sports radio stations means, more. It means more takes. It means more jobs. It means more
radio.
It means more. It means more for sports and more for media than anyone. So the odd person that loses sight of that and just wants the other side to fail, whether it's on our side or on their side, I think is really, really stupid, really short-sighted. Hey, it's Andrew Walker from Sportsnet 650, and I'm really excited to be on Ryan's podcast. I only touch greatness. I'm not sure why I'm on it, not somebody else, but looking forward to it.
Hey, you're on here for a reason there, bud. Hey, I thank you very much for coming, and I look forward to seeing you at a Canuck game or somewhere down the road.
All right, man. Take care, buddy.
Thank you.
Okay. Later.
Bye-bye.